All right, guys, this is another episode of Puckin' Around. Again, I'm Cody Pucks. I need to get I don't know, I said I'd get a new bucket, but this Cincinnati Cyclones one is working well. Um, on this episode, we have the Columbus Blue Jackets with an Iceman, a good friend. It's AldyLights. AldyLights, how we doing, brother?
Great, Cody Pucks. Thanks for having me on, man. Really appreciate it. It's been great to follow you on X and hit some plays together. We had I think it really started with Alex Nylander when he went on that tear with the Jackets after the trade deadline. We're all hopping on that bandwagon, but I was actually in the building when he scored a goal, and I think you had a prop bet for like a point or something like that, and maybe sprinkled in some shot props, right?
Yeah. So the shot props, I like to save the next year. I need guys reminding me save the shot props for after the year, like playoff time,
Yeah, yeah.
because we're going points this year, and we're
Okay.
focusing on that. I found Alex Nylander. Uh, Unfortunately, not on the team anymore. We'll get to that later. But just tell us a little bit about how long you've been following the Columbus Blue Jackets and
hmm
kind of how you got into your role. I know you're an ice follower, so talk about
Yeah.
that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So I moved to Columbus about 10 years ago. I'm a sports fan. I love hockey, so it's kind of a natural fit to root for the Jackets, and they actually have had some pretty good years here. They had that run from 2017 to 2020 where they made the playoffs. They beat Tampa. They had built some pretty good momentum, and it's a great fan base. It's a really cool hockey city. The arena is a lot of fun. So it's been great following the Jackets and going to games. And my son's in the Learn to Play program now, so he's getting into hockey. So it's really been great. And yeah, I mean, for Mr. Ice, I feel like I was following him a little bit before sports betting was legalized in Ohio, just because like his after his bet hit and he was ripping his shirt and stuff like that.
His
Yeah,
energy,
his
man.
energy.
That's
He's
what we
just
all love.
it was infectious. And like I never gambled before, and I was like, man, this is awesome. Who is this guy? And then I started to see his background, and then once stuff got rolling in Ohio, I was all on board with it. And yeah, it's been great, and this is a really cool community, and it's awesome that you're doing this and bringing everybody together to talk about their favorite teams.
Yeah, and once I mean that's the reason. I always would tell my friends, Cody Pucks, here he comes. Cody Pucks, he's coming next season. Uh and them not as much as me. I like you would follow Mr. Ice, and just something about him. It's something so simple. Just over 6.5 goals. Just root for 7 goals. And
Yeah,
then I mean, it's straight to Twitter. It's just watching him rip that shirt, looking for
yeah,
the caption and looking what he says. It really is crazy, the community that he's built,
yeah.
and how it really brings guys like you and me together. And I'm happy to have you today. I'm
Thank you.
glad you said something about the Columbus Blue Jackets against the Lightning, because the Blue
Oh
Jackets
yeah.
were an eight. They were an 8 seed that year.
Yep.
The Lightning were the best in the league. The Blue Jackets nipped them in the playoffs. I always say nothing matters till late April, early May. It sounds like you were following that. Tell us a little bit how that felt.
Yeah, yeah, that was crazy because that was the same year, um, with all the drama with the players. Panarin and Bobrovsky, their contracts were up. They were going to be unrestricted. They were going to be UFAs, and they were not planning on re-signing with Columbus. So the front office really had to make a lot of decisions, right, of whether or not they should trade these guys. And credit to Yarmo and Yarmo Kekalainen, the GM at the time, and the front office. They went all in. They traded for Matthew Shane at the trade deadline. They picked up Ryan Dzingel. They kind of they picked up reinforcements, and they went all in. And I honestly, that first round, they were the eighth team to get in the wild card. I think it was the second to last game of the season that they got in. Um, and yeah, I mean, nobody was picking Columbus. I think some people said if Bobrovsky stood on his head, maybe they could make it a series, but certainly nobody was calling for a sweep. Um, and I remember I remember watching the first game, and they were down 3-0 after the first period, and you're just like, well, this is it. It's over. And I think at the end of the third period, Tampa was on a power play too, so they were coming out in the beginning of the second period on a power play, and Bobrovsky made just like a ridiculous save. I think it was on Stamkos or Kucherov, like point blank, and then they just kind of held steady, and they ended up obviously coming back and winning that game 4-3, and then they blew them out in game two. But yeah, what a series that was. I honestly felt that if they didn't run into Boston in that second round, that they could have gone to the final. I don't know if they would have won, but it felt like that. And the Bruins it felt like they got through Toronto that year in Game 7, and Columbus had that huge layoff. They had like 10 days off, and it was the whole rest versus rust.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'm,
what a run that was.
I mean, inject that shit into my veins, because just a sweep from an 8-1 matchup, that's something you don't see in other sports, and it really is the reason that I love hockey. Another reason is, it's a sport that you just need to watch and get accustomed to. And it's a long season, but it's not as long as the MLB season.
No.
Every game is fun, and you have penalties, you have power plays, you have shorthanded goals, you got a lot of action going on, the empty netters at the end.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the angle that got me excited about coming into the game, introducing myself. There's a lot of options and a lot of opportunity to win some money one way or another. That's what we're going to try to do this year. Tell me, I guess first, Mr. Ice was on the Blue Jackets. He had a little run last year where the Blue Jackets had Merzlikins, who's a good goalie, but they weren't sure what they were going to do with him. They were kind of inserting the backup a little bit. Tell me how last season went, and I guess what your expectations were at the start of the season.
For sure. So, I mean, obviously 2 years ago was a really bad year for them, and that's where they ended up picking third in the lottery. But they were an awesome team to follow if you were into playing
a fun
overs.
Team. Yep.
Yeah, if you love playing overs and like seeing lots of goals, because they would, their defense and their goaltending was leaky, but they also had some skill, and they could score, so they could keep up. So they were a fun team. They were definitely like an over team a couple years ago. This past year, they had their kind of ups and downs, and I think they ended up, kind of like even split on the overs. But yeah, it was definitely a step in the right direction for them. But I mean, the season was kind of shot from the beginning with the whole Babcock situation, and I don't know if anybody knows who Aaron Portzline is, but he's the beat writer for the Athletic that covers the Blue Jackets. And when I've heard him use this term before, or use the saying to describe the Blue Jackets: rarely good, never boring. And that just seems to ring true every single year, whether it's them playing on the ice or stuff that's going on in the off season. Going back to the whole Babcock stuff last year, and then they brought in they fired him 4 days before training camp, so the season just kind of got off to a weird start. And they had a really bad losing streak early on. I think in November they lost like 10 plus games in a row, maybe even more than that. So once again, the season was kind of over before Thanksgiving. So, but this team, after what happened a couple years ago, you kind of knew, all right, this team was in full rebuild mode. So at least now you can look back and say, the hardest part is behind them, as far as like getting rid of all their good players, drafting new players. Now they've kind of gotten those high draft picks. They've got Fantilli. They've got the kid that they drafted this year, Caden Lindstrom. So they're starting to kind of you can kind of see like where things are heading as far as maybe building towards a playoff team a couple years from now. But this team is all about development, prospects, the youth that they have, because they have one of the best prospect pipelines in the NHL, and they have for a couple years now. So, unfortunately, Armo Kekalainen was let go, the GM, during the season. Um, but to his credit, he was a really good talent evaluator. He was a really good scout, and they always had really good draft picks. And I think that his talent, his background in scouting was a big reason why he was so good at evaluating trades. He always made good trades too. I mean, he got Panarin, he got Brandon Saad at one point, and he made the deal with Chicago to ship Seth Jones there, and they got a top 5 pick from out of that deal. So, but yeah, I think now that Don Waddell's in the president, president hockey ops GM role, they just hired a coach today. I think you can kind of see things falling into place over the next few years, where hopefully, you could see this team making a run at the playoffs in the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and that's the thing about hockey is that they have the hard cap, and it always is
And
about.
it's been flat for a while. It's
That's
gone up
right.
recently, but it's been flat for a while, which it was really tough for teams to really make any moves in the offseason or do anything, right?
And then you have the 2 expansion teams coming in, and they got
Yeah.
the rules where you got to protect. You can protect so many players, but then some random team can come in, pick and choose.
Yeah.
And I don't know for sure, but I'm sure that a couple Blue Jackets might have been picked from there. Who knows?
William Karlsson, ring a bell?
Oh,
Wild
jeez.
Bill. Yeah.
Oh, Wild Bill. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing that I like about Columbus is that not only whatever you said, they're not boring, but they'll be fun. What's the saying again?
Rarely good, never boring.
Rarely good, never boring. And as somebody who can come home from work, buy tickets for about $80 and
Yeah.
roll up I-71 and go to a Blue Jackets game, I appreciate that.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
I think there will be more opportunities next year for them to hit a lot of overs. They got good players, and Fantilli's a stud, man.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
while certain players that they traded for, Johnny Gaudreau, it might not have panned out the way that you thought. They have a big upbringing of talent, in their, I'll call it, their farm system.
The
But
pipeline. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
the pipeline. Talk a little bit about the young players, but first, talk about Johnny Gaudreau.
Yeah. So it's funny because I was listening to Fish on your Kraken one, and he was talking about Bjorkstrand, and
Yeah,
that was a bittersweet day for Blue Jackets fans, because when a player like Johnny Gaudreau comes to you and says, I want to play here long term," it's what you've always wanted. But where the franchise was at the time, and people have said this, they're like, maybe it wasn't, it just wasn't the right time for that kind of, to bring a player like that in. But
hard
at
talent
this,
in the moment.
yeah, but at the same time, when he's coming to you to say, "Hey, I want to sign a contract long term with you," and Columbus has had this, you know, I don't want to say problem, but just like, they've just had a history of big name players leaving. So when a big name player, the most coveted free agent at the time in that class, in 2022 or whatever it was, he comes to you and say, "I want to play for you. I'm going to sign." You have to say yes. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, a casualty from that was losing Oliver Bjorkstrand, who was still just kind of a young player, still coming into his own on a really good team friendly deal. So yeah, it sucked to see him go. But that Johnny Gaudreau, it hasn't been. I'm trying to think I don't want to say he's been unleashed or unlocked, but there's definitely.
He's got to go this year. And my brother, he lives in Columbus, so right
Okay,
when
cool.
Johnny Gaudreau signed, I was like, boy, like, here we go. Like, Johnny Gaudreau is a stud. Like, let's go Columbus Blue Jackets. But it hasn't been like that. And I hate hating on players because they're people just like you and me, and every situation's different. But I think we
Yeah,
can both agree Johnny
the new
Gaudreau's got to
city,
go
young
this year.
family, all that stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's got to go this year. And Boone Jenner, the captain, correct? Is Boone Jenner the captain?
yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
broke up there. Yeah, yeah. Boone's the
So
captain.
so so Boone's the captain, and you guys
Just
still got Line
just
A,
to yeah,
correct?
just to go back on the Gaudreau thing. Yeah, Line signed Gaudreau signed the long-term deal, and then Line extended because he was an RFA, so he signed a 4-year deal. And everybody was thinking like, oh my god, you've got Johnny Gaudreau
Studs.
dish into Patrick Line, like this could be a lethal power play, and it just never came to fruition, But
Yeah, and when I watch them, so what's frustrating to me about that little tandem is that, I mean, they are both so skilled. They're in the right spot at the right time. They're silky with their mitts, and
mhm,
but to me, and I don't get into all the analytics and stuff, but it just seems to me like Gaudreau doesn't. I've taken well. How I learned about it was I took Gaudreau over shots on goal a couple times,
mhm,
and he just doesn't shoot. And whether that's a lack of effort or trying to get other guys involved, it was frustrating to me over the
mhm.
past year and a half. So I really want to see more from Johnny Gaudreau this year. Is Line A, is he locked and loaded, ready to go this year? Him and I guess Boone Jenner, are they looking to move those guys, or are those guys here to stay?
Okay, awesome. I'm glad that you brought both those guys up. But yeah, so Gaudreau, they did sign Sean Monahan, who was one of
I,
his
I
best.
like I like Sean Monahan a lot, by the way.
Yeah, so they have a lot of time playing together in Calgary. They're still really close. I think that was one reason why they brought in Monahan, was to try and kind of get Gaudreau back on track and kind of unleash him a little bit more, and kind of get him back up into that point per game player that he can be. Because I think last year, yeah, he finished the year with 60. You definitely feel like there's a little bit more meat on the bone there, and I think they're hoping that Monahan's going to help them in 3 different ways. One is Gaudreau, trying to get Gaudreau back on track. The second is it allows Boone Jenner, like you mentioned, to not be a center anymore and put him on the wing, because he's logged a ton of minutes at center. He's great on faceoffs, but he's had back issues in the problem. I think they want to kind of start to kind of take his workload down a little bit. And he's going to be perfect. And I think that I don't know if this is what will happen long term, but I think they'll start with him on Fantilli's wing on the second line. So they'll have Adam Fantilli center that second line. They'll have Boone Jenner with him, help him with face-off, defensive zone face-offs, things like that, until he kind of starts to keep growing and developing. But then, yeah, Line. So it can't. So he's in the player assistance program right now.
He's still there.
Yes.
Okay.
But I did see a video of him training with like some football players or something. So he's getting in shape. He's getting ready for training camp. Like he's gonna be all systems go whenever that plays out. I don't know the specifics there, but I guess he went into the player assistance program during the year and he had requested a trade. So he wants out of Columbus, and
Still.
still, yep.
Okay.
So the a lot of things had to happen at first. They had to get new president, GM in place, which they did with
Yep.
Waddell. Then
Yep.
kind of the focus was, okay, we need to get the draft taken care of. We need to get a coach, which they finally did. But I want to say that there probably have been preliminary talks with teams who are interested in acquiring Patrick Line, but they can't talk to him yet because he's still in that player assistance program. But once
Oh,
he
okay.
once once he does, he can start talking to teams. But there's obviously tons of rumors out there. I mean, the fact that what Barry Trotz did in Nashville, it's definitely feels like they've kind of pushed their chips into the table, into the middle of the
Absolutely.
table, right? They signed Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault. They just signed Saros to a long-term deal. So a lot of people have been throwing Askarov's name out of there, who's their like top goalie prospect, and he's one of the top goalie prospects in the league. But I don't know if that's if there's any truth to that. The other player too that's come up a bunch has been Marty Necas in Carolina, because he's due
Oh,
for a new
wow.
deal. Yeah, and there were a lot of rumors that on draft night, if Caden Lindstrom was not available to Columbus at 4, that they would have traded back, and that
Wow.
yeah. So they had, and Don Waddell confirmed that they had a deal in place to move back if they wanted to, um, but it didn't. So, and they got the player they wanted. They had Caden Lidstrom, who's a center, huge,
Stud.
huge,
Yeah.
yeah, huge, big frame, just like Fantilli, 6'4", 220. I mean, both those guys down the middle in a few years. I mean, that's what you want if you're in the playoffs. You want big centers. These guys are physical players. But in the draft, obviously, um, uh, Macklin Celebrini was going first. And then the Blackhawks were kind of a wild card, because a lot of people were saying the defenseman from Michigan State, Artem Levchnov, was going to go number 2. But after Demidov, right, worked out, his name was going around a bunch, and a lot of people were like, "This guy Chicago
He
might
he
take him."
better work out. He better work out. That's what I was
Yeah,
saying.
yeah. So, but they ended up taking Levchnov, and Anaheim ended up taking oh shoot, what's his name? I can't remember, but they took somebody kind of a surprise, right? It was
Oh, yeah, that guy at number 3, and he was like, "Holy shit." Like, yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah,
remember that, yeah.
I can't remember his name, but anyway, so um but yeah, they've got they got a pretty strong pipeline going in Columbus, and they've really all the organization from the beginning has always lacked center depth, and they've really addressed it in the last few years with Cole Sillinger, Adam Fantilli, now Caden Lidstrom. It's going to be an interesting team to watch over the next few years, and watch these players in the minors as they
Yeah.
develop.
Yeah, and that's kinda what I look for, as teams elevate themselves to make
Mm-hmm.
late playoff runs, and I look for these teams that compete late in games, and Mr. Ice just happens to be on all of them.
Yeah,
Um, I
yeah,
think I think you can kind of compare them to a Walmart version of Vancouver, because Vancouver, before they really started going, obviously, they had pieces like Rick Tocchet come in, and
mm-hmm.
they had the players, but they were neck and neck with Ottawa the year before, and
Mm-hmm.
the teams that can compete late and score goals, the fun teams.
Yeah,
Columbus has a lot of talent, so if they can figure out what to do with Line A, and they have a solid core. They got Boone Jenner, Gaudreau if he can go. Obviously, we talked about Monahan. Uh, what's up with this? What's up with this Kirill Marchenko? Because I think that dude is nasty.
wow, I'm so glad you brought him up, because I was going to say, if you're looking at Columbus from a fantasy perspective, I don't think they have too many guys even in the top 150. I think Werenski would be up there, and then
Definitely
Fantilli,
love
Fantilli,
Werenski.
yeah, he's awesome. Fantilli's up there, and same with Boone Jenner. But if you're looking to take a flyer, it's Kirill Marchenko, because this guy has got a wicked shot. He's extremely skilled. He's strong with the puck, and he's dynamite on the power play. And I
He's
think,
only like 23 or 24 too. He's so young, isn't he?
yeah, he's young. So he's an RFA right now, and a lot of people, he hasn't signed a deal yet. So a lot of people are speculating that he's looking to get something long term in place with Columbus right now, like a 5-year deal.
I would hope so for them, because as far as gambling goes, I don't really dip my toes into the Blue Jackets too often, but when I
Hmm.
do, it's Kirill Marchenko, and then it's this. What's this Chinikov guy about?
Ah,
Because I don't know when he came up or when he showed his face, but I've seen this guy too, and I don't know if he's Russian as well as Marchenko. I assume that Marchenko is Russian, but I've noticed him on the box score a little bit.
oh yeah, uh, yeah. The Russians in Columbus had a big year last year. It's the player you're referencing is Yegor Chinikov, and
Chinikov,
he was drafted in the COVID draft, and he was actually the year they drafted him. Nobody even knew who he was, but Columbus drafted him in the first round, and he did end up being the rookie of the year in the KHL that year. And he's kind of slowly but surely come along. He's had a lot of issues with injuries, but when he's played, man, he's got a wicked shot. Really, I mean, goal scorer, pure goal scorer. He's awesome. The other guy too, the other Russian, he was a rookie last year, is Dmitry Voronkov, and he is just a monster of a
really
man, just huge
big
and
boy.
big boy. He played 75 games last year, and let's see, he's 6'5", 240, and he scored 18 goals last year for Columbus. I mean, he did get like a little bit of Calder, you know, um,
Yeah, yeah.
like maybe
So,
like
I mean,
one
nobody's gonna win the year that Bedard's in it. Yeah,
Bedardson, yeah, for
yeah.
sure. So, but yeah, I mean, that's just the kind of case in point to the youth in Columbus. Marchenko led the team in goals. He led the team in power play goals. Voronkov, he was only averaging 13 and a half minutes ice time. He still managed 34 points. He scored, 6 power play goals. So they've got some talent. Another one from fantasy perspective, if you're looking to take a flyer, is Gaudreau. Now that he's with Monahan, maybe you
I
can
would
get him
agree.
a later round, and there might still be some value to extract there from a fantasy perspective because he will be on the first power play unit. He's going to be on the top line with Monahan and probably Marchenko.
Yeah, he's going to be out there, and those are the guys that I like to take. Just guys that are on the ice that just accidentally run into a couple.
Yeah,
So probably, I mean, oh, it's gonna take a lot for me to get over my. And I don't dislike, and I hate hating on players, but to get over my just yucky taste for Johnny Gaudreau. But I'm
yeah.
looking for him to have a good year this year. I believe in you, Johnny. If you're listening, probably not, but maybe. Um, and I hope that I
We all
really
do.
hope that yeah, I hope that for just me living in Ohio, I hope for the sake of Ohio, Johnny Gaudreau can get going this year. You said something about the goalie
Yeah.
in Nashville. Have you read anything on trade talks kind of advancing on that, or have things calmed down?
No, I think it was just people speculating, but yeah, the goaltending in Columbus is, I would say, tenuous at the moment
What's
because
up with Merzlinkus? Is he just going to stay there, or
he's his contract is, I mean, he's making like $5.5 million, I think, is what his salary is every year. So
mm-hmm.
the contract is kind of an albatross as far as trying to move it. So you just kind of have to hope that he can kind of, he can get back on track. And if he wants to get traded out of town, it's on him to perform. If he wants to be the number one goalie, it's on him to perform. But right now, I think going into the year, it's going to be him. It's going to be a Russian goalie, Daniil Tarasov, and then Jet Greaves is the goalie for Cleveland. But we could see him quite a bit because Tarasov and Merzlikins have both shown propensity for injuries over the last couple of years. So he could get Jet Greaves could be a name that you see a lot more, and he's played well when he's been up in Columbus, and he was a big part of that run.
Jack Greaves got me a couple times on the betting edge.
Did he?
I saw I saw a guy named Jet, and I said this guy stinks. Jet, sorry about that, but and he makes saves, and it
Yeah,
didn't work out that night. So that name kind of rings a bell to me, at least.
yeah. So, definitely you definitely want to get the goaltending sorted out, but they need to get the defense sorted out in front of them too. And I think having Werenski healthy, hopefully, one of the young players that they have coming up, a couple defensemen, David Juracek, he should be with the club to start the year. And another name is Denton Matejchuk. He's on his way up to the team. He could make it this year, but if he's not, he'll be in the AHL Cleveland Monsters for to start the year. But everybody said he's very calm with the puck for his age. Being a young player playing defense, which is a tough position for young players to come into the NHL and perform. So that's a name to keep an eye out for.
How about that ad just playing right there? Yeah, I like Werenski a ton. He's had some injuries in the past. Another player that I've always been big on. I think maybe before the season or mid-season, they got Provorov from Philly, and I'm a fan of that guy. He's infamously the guy that wouldn't wear the rainbow warm-ups in Philly, during Pride Week, but you don't mess with those Russians and their routines. I like Provorov a lot too. I like taking him, kind of on little flyers to have a point. I don't know how you feel about him, but
yeah, he actually I thought was pretty good last year. He's a good defender. He's on the last year of his deal, so I could see him being a trade piece at the deadline if a team's looking to stock up. So, but yeah, I mean, the lineup is pretty much set. They had, obviously we're waiting for the head coach, but I mean, once
what do you think about this new coach? So I did a little research on him, and it for me being just a gambler and a hockey fan, every year I look at Minnesota and I like Minnesota, and that's where this guy comes from. He made the playoffs. I think his first year was the COVID year. I don't count that, but the 3 years after, he made the playoffs, and then last year he got fired at the beginning. Are you excited about this guy coming in?
Yeah, I am. I think, when Don Waddell said he wanted a veteran NHL coach, I think that was, this obviously checks that box. And, he had a good record in Minnesota. He was there for 4.5 seasons. And he was 251, 147, and 77, which is a 639 points percentage, which is 7th among active coaches. So he had good teams. I mean, and he went to all 4 of his full seasons that he coached, they went to the playoffs. Now the problem is that they're only 8-15 in the playoffs, and they never made it out of the first round. But yeah, I mean, he coached some good teams, and like you said, he got fired. They went on a 7-game losing streak and got, unfortunately, in the landscape of not even the NHL, just sports in general today, I feel like if a team starts to slide, this coach is the first one.
What are you going to do for me now? Yep.
Yeah. So
I saw that and even when he made the playoffs, I think it was 2 6-game series, and then 1 year was a 7-game series.
Yeah.
So he's right on the doorstep, and it has to be tough for not only the young guys coming into the system, what happened last year with Babcock, but just the guys that they had signed and just getting kind of a rhythm from the top. So hopefully they can develop a little bit of a rhythm this year. And, I don't know. What do you expect? Beginning of the year, kind of what's the ceiling and what's the floor?
Well, I would say the ceiling would be, can they be within striking distance of a playoff spot in March? And to me, I think that would be, hey, we've made we've made some progress. We had, we started to make some momentum this year. Hopefully, you start to see the young guys develop and see them step up. I think that would be like the ceiling. The floor, I mean, they were last in the Eastern Conference,
The
and
floor is the floor.
it could happen again. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
once you've hit rock bottom, there is nowhere to go but up. So I think that this team's ready to make a rebound. I think if they can get some good goaltending, get their defense figured out, they brought in they already have some veteran voices in the locker room, but bringing in Monahan, I think helps. They're bringing back Jack Johnson, who's familiar. He still lives in Columbus, and he played in Columbus for a long time. So I think bringing him back helps a lot. Um, but yeah, it's all about the youth movement in Columbus and developing the prospects and just kind of watching their progress over the next few years. Like a player that's with the squad now is like a Kent Johnson. You could kind of wait to see. He's got an incredible skill set. What's that?
I like Kent Johnson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had the Michigan goal a couple years ago. He's a highly skilled player. They drafted him top 5. That was the year that like 3 of the top 5 picks were all Michigan players. His own Power, Matty Beniers, and he's just got a slender frame, so it's him acclimating to the NHL. The speed and the quickness and the size of the players he's up against. But that's another player that if they could get that could take a step, that could be helpful for them, as far as the success that they could have this year. Same with like a Cole Sillinger, those young players that that you want to see start to kind of like fortify themselves as solid NHL players.
Those are the players that I look at for a team like Columbus, or a team that's in a 6, 7, 8 spot in their division.
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
I, I look at those. I look at those players, and Kent Johnson jumped out at me. He was kind of in the same slot as Nylander when
yeah.
we were just trying to. We were just trying to. I think I was. I think that I was like 58 and 71 on the year, and I needed someone. And Alex Nylander brought me from the dead. So I appreciate those players, and Kent Johnson I notice a lot too. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think you brought up a good point that it's a realistic expectation just to see where you guys are at in
Mm-hmm.
March, and
Mm-hmm.
even moving back a little, see where you're at the All-Star break.
Yeah.
You got some tools. People want line A. I mean, teams that are going to make playoff runs, line A is the type of player you would think to bring in and kind of bolster, a third line. Even though I would probably say he's not a third line guy. He's probably a first or second line guy, but he could be important to those teams. And
That's such a good point. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I want to say it was Mr. Ice had brought up. He was like line A. He wanted line A with the Bruins. And when Columbus acquired line A in the Dubois trade, a lot of people were enamored, right, with the skill set, the shot. I mean, he is just but he's like this mercurial talent, right? He's got, he went on spurts. He really, and it never really came out in Columbus. But what somebody had said, and I wish I knew who it was, and it was a good way to describe him. They said Patrick Laine is a luxury. He's not a player that you're going to set in the center of your franchise and say, I'm going to build around Patrick Laine like you would. I don't want to be unfair to him, but like a Nathan McKinnon or an Austin Matthews or even an Adam Fantilli. Adam
right.
Fantilli, they drafted him. Like Adam Fantilli is the core franchise centerpiece now for the Columbus Blue Jackets. And I think, at the time we all got caught up in the Patrick Laine hype and thought, okay, this is it. Like, this is our franchise player. And he is more of a luxury because of his skill set, right? And because of the position he plays. And, he's, like you said, a team that needs scoring and needs power play goals in the playoffs. He would be electric.
A lot of guys that have, a superior skill set like that, I feel like they just need to be put in the right system. so
Hmm.
that it can blossom. And once you see it on the ice, in Columbus with the team that he's skating for, but once you put them on, just mix it up a little. And
Hmm.
I feel
This
like
this
that's when guys really start to recognize him and be like, man,
this the size, the speed, the hands, the shot. I mean, he's a phenomenal hockey player, and it sucks that he wants out of Columbus, but I get it. He wants to go play for a winner probably,
that's right. Yeah, and we'll see what
or maybe he wants to change the scenery. I mean,
Eh,
that's
that's
totally.
fair too. A lot
Hmm.
of a lot of the time, that's just what needs to happen. For
Hmm.
better or worse, for one team or the other, they'll look at it different ways. But yeah,
But
we'll
yeah, I could.
see what. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I could see Columbus being another over team to follow this year, though. Last year they weren't so much, but I think you could pick your spots as far as the sides, because in hockey, like you were saying, anybody can win pretty much any night. So if you can get a good price on Columbus, and you're getting a team on a back to back, or you're getting a team in a spot, it could be a good one, a good team to ride with. But yeah, I think they could be an over team as far as from our interests.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm glad you said that, because I would definitely agree with that. I would stress to people that, Mr. Ice liked him last year, but
I
eh,
was at I was
eh,
at I it was an early game against Arizona, that we were and I was at the game, and it was painful because I want to say it was like a 2-0 game the whole entire game. Like, just nobody could do anything. It sucked.
yeah, and I ran into that a lot with Columbus last year. I wasn't as high on them
Hmm.
as Mr. Ice or other people, just because I think I went to a game. I think it was them against the Flames, and just naturally, I'm gonna bet the over, and it was like 1-1, and then I think it was Fantilli. It might have been Fantilli's first goal.
Okay.
But it's weird how you bet on these teams, and you see them once and they burn you, and then you're kind of
Leaves a bad
hesitant to
taste in
go
your
back
mouth.
to them. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I would definitely look at Columbus being an over team this year. And I'm with you, man. I mean, just see where they are in February and March, because just as a natural hockey fan, I look at them and I see a lot of talent. It's just a matter of, are they going to put it together and maybe make a trade for the guy from Nashville in goal,
Hmm.
or and
Or,
and
or any, yeah, yeah, and see where Line ends up, because they'll probably eat some of that contract, but they could get something in return that's worthwhile, and not just be like a throwaway trade, right?
Yep, yep. A lot of flexibility in Columbus, and for next season, I wish you the best of luck. It was a
And
pleasure talking to you, buddy. Go ahead.
yeah, and hopefully they're in it February, March, because they got the Stadium Series game at the Shoe,
That's right. That's right.
which is
So, I
yeah.
mean, is that a potential IceCon spot? Maybe, maybe outdoor
I
first IceCon outdoor. How fun would that be?
I you know what? I don't know. It might be tough to get tickets for that though, because that's put on by the NHL, and the season ticket holders for Detroit and Columbus are going to get first dibs on all those. But I mean,
We'll
it is
find a
100
way.
110,000 seats, but yeah, that's really cool. I'm excited for that. That the city has been waiting for that game at that stadium. It's one of the iconic stadiums in the country. To have a hockey game played there, it's going to be huge for that organization, this fan base, for the whole country, the world to see, and like that, the island game. I'm sure Chicklets will probably be out here covering it and whatnot.
They
It's
will.
uh,
Yep.
it's going to be an exciting time to be around Columbus, and I'm excited for the fan base. You know, they've been waiting for this. They've stuck by this team for so long, and they just have never given them anything. And this is at least something where if the season does kind of stink and it's like Christmas and they're out of it, at least we know, okay, let's get to March 3rd and the Stadium Series game, and have a ball.
Yeah, you talking like that. I mean, the things that I would do to just have an NHL team to root for here in Cincinnati. I mean, don't feel
Yeah.
bad at all because it's sports, man, and that's what keeps guys like you and me going. Real quick before we go, are
Yeah.
you an Ohio State football fan?
I am not.
You are
That's
not.
no. I'm a Michigan State alum.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sparty. There you
Yes.
go.
Yep. Sparty
Okay,
on.
we gave you guys D'Antonio back in the day.
Oh hell yeah! Absolutely, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny when I first moved down here. I telling people I moved here from Michigan, you kind of get the side eye. But once you
Oh
tell
yeah.
them,
Yeah.
hey, I went to Michigan State, and it's like, oh, okay,
No blood, no blood.
cool.
Right, that's funny.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah,
D'Antonio is awesome, man. He'll have a statue up there someday.
yeah, yeah, and Mr.
The
Ice
hockey.
is gonna put his college football pick out here pretty soon. He said he's
Oh
down to
yeah,
3 teams. He tagged SEC Network, so it's got to be one of those teams, but you got to think he's looking at Ohio State. I'm not an Ohio State fan. I could care less Ohio State or Michigan, but
yeah, yeah.
I'm in one of those grooves right now to where kind of like the Gaudreau thing, not to that extent, but I think I'm going to bet Ohio State to win the college football playoff every year until they do it, just because
Yeah.
I can't lay off of it, and they're so due.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to my neighbor about it. He's got season tickets, and I said, I don't follow the team that closely, but I follow the Big Ten. And I just said, it seems like things have been pretty quiet in Columbus around the football team. And he was like, yeah, it has.
It's
For
good.
me, for me as a fan of a team, that's awesome. I'm
That's
like,
that's a good sign.
nose to the grindstone. Let's just get to work.
Lay in
Um,
the weeds.
yeah, so that's and there's still going to be preseason. The media came out today with their preseason poll, and Ohio State was tops in the conference, which is not surprising. But yeah, it's been quiet, so we'll see. But I think that they'll be ready, and I could very well see Mr. Ice picking OSU. But you said he tagged SEC. Do you think he's going back to Texas?
It'd be hard to go Texas 2 years in a row.
Okay,
I
interesting.
I I I don't know because I try to. So lately I've been betting horses, and I need to get off that because I
That's
I
tough.
just, oh my gosh, yeah, it's so tough. I mean, I might as well just hand the phone to my girlfriend and have her pick a couple numbers and names because I feel like she's got just as good enough chance of winning. But I try to limit myself to just betting on NHL. That's what I'm going to try to do this year. Is in the past year and a half, I've had my fair share of nights to where um, I feel like I got 1 to 2 good plays, and then I might force the third. So,
Hmm.
so I'm gonna try to limit it to 1 or 2. I mean, who knows what I'm gonna do once the season gets going, but yeah, I think NHL we just have a real jump on the odds and kind of a good feel of what's going to happen. I don't think Vegas is caught up to the NHL yet. Could be wrong. Hopefully, they're not listening to this. But
Well,
uh,
yeah. Well, are you talking about futures in the NHL?
yeah, futures and well, I think I'm going to wait on futures, but just that versus the college football stuff, and
Mm.
I'll bet on NFL.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
But
Uh, you know,
just to keep the beak wet.
so for Mr. Ice, SEC could be Georgia, right? Um,
Obviously.
I don't know if that I don't know where they're sitting in, as far as the pecking order, but it feels like they're always locked and loaded. Um, and something that I picked up too, if you're looking at NHL futures, and something that I did this year was if you can catch a team on a bad, like Edmonton went on that really long losing streak, and their
Yep.
odds just were
Could have
crazy,
got him at like 15,
20 to
16,
1.
8, 20 to 1
20 to
Unbelievable.
1 in November. And same thing with Florida. I mean, Florida was still 18 to 1 in December. But if you're looking preseason, like at a team like if you're looking at Utah, who used to be Arizona, or if
I
you're
like
looking
them.
at if you're looking at a team to make the playoffs, look at um, the odds for the coach to get like the Jack Adams, because like last
Mm,
year, like everybody was pumping the tires for Arizona, which I was on too, and everybody's like, this is an easy dark horse team to make the playoffs. And it was like, 6 to 1. But if you looked at Torini to win Jack Adams, it was like 45 to 1. And like
I
the
see.
logic, the theory is like, if you think that this team's going to sneak in in the playoffs, then they might have they might be, above everybody's expectations. You might be able to capitalize on something like that with some really long odds, as far as like, that would be a coach of the year type of accomplishment.
I like that. All right.
Yeah.
Well, AldyLights, this was fun. I appreciate you coming on the show. I hope that people can get some good info about the Columbus Blue Jackets. I'm sure I'll be at a few games this year. I'll have to
Yeah,
hit you up.
for
And
sure.
man, I can't wait to get back to the grind with the ice people.
Hell yeah, man. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it, Cody Pucks. It was an
Yes,
honor.
sir. I'll see ya.
Take care.